Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here today. So I am Samantha Meyer. I am the Director of Experiential Programs for Grady College. I help students get connected with industry experiences and help implement the Experiential Learning Initiative at UGA here in Grady. And this is Candid Conversations with Grady alumni who graduated in the late 2000s. I'm co-hosting this event with Whitney Denny and Diane Murray. So I am going to let them introduce themselves. Whitney, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Whitney Denny. I'm an Assistant Director of Operations and Strategy at the UGA Career Center, and I am your career consultant as Grady students. So I'm available all summer via Zoom if you have questions and concerns and want to meet with me, want someone to look over your resume, or just figure out all of those career questions that you might have. So definitely connect with me. You can make an appointment with me on Handshake. Or reach out to me via email as well.
Wonderful. And I'm looking for Diane in our attendee list. I think she might be having a technical difficulty getting on. Zoom sometimes can be troublesome, as I'm sure we all know. So we will make sure that we give her a second to say hey to everyone, but she is our alumni director here in Grady. So I'm going to be moderating our event today. And before we kick it off, I just wanted to take a moment and say that with so much going on right now, we really appreciate you all taking the time to be with us. There are many other things that you all can be doing instead, especially as communicators. You all can be writing and creating content, amplifying voices, calling attention to what's happening in our country, our state, your city. So thank you all for taking the time to join us. This goes for our attendees as well as our panelists. So we have been planning this event since about mid to late May. The concept was formed in response to COVID-19, and at that point, things already felt pretty uncertain. And in the time since, we've even started promoting our event. We've seen protests in all 50 states in response to police brutality and killing of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. So I think it's safe to say that no one has all of the answers right now, but we felt it was important to continue this event as we planned, to continue to have candid conversations. And as you all schedule the time to attend, and our panelists graciously took time out of their schedules, we wanted to make the space. We want to continue to have these conversations with you and support you, as I know we've got some recent graduates and current students on here. So we're going to share as much information as we can about starting your career in uncertain times. So to get us started, we're going to start with about 30 minutes of planned questions and about 30 minutes of audience questions. So attendees, you can submit your questions through the Q&A box and we will be monitoring those. So to kick us off, we are going to start in alphabetical order. So Baron, thank you for kicking us off here.
Apologies for dialing in a couple minutes late. I'm all good. I'm here.
Awesome, no problem. Can you all please tell us what you studied and when you graduated, along with what you do now? So Baron, please take it away.
Absolutely, and I hope everyone on this webinar, conference call is doing well on this Wednesday. So my name is Baron Brown. I graduated in 2009, and my major was advertising, and I'm actually working in advertising. So I moved to New York in 2010. Which is crazy to think of because that's a smooth decade ago at this point. And so my experience has been working for media agencies, and then I transitioned over to the sales side of things, selling digital media. I spent about 5 years at Amazon after leaving the sales end of the desk. So then that gave me the chance to not only work in sales, but also work as a client. I spent some time working within Amazon advertising, and then transitioned over to Seattle for a few years to work on Amazon Fresh and launch some of their initiatives like Whole Foods and meal kits and things like that. And I am now back in New York working in ad sales at Pinterest. So that is me in a nutshell as far as my professional background and how that aligns with my Grady curriculum.
Okay, you continue us on.
I'm next. Okay, great. I do know the alphabet, so, great. That was all UGA. Thanks. Great education. No, hey everybody. My name's Chad Mumm. I graduated in 2008 from Grady as a telecom arts major, which I don't think that exact major exists anymore. It's a different name, but I have worked in media my entire career. Like Baron, I moved to New York, straight from Athens 11 years ago, and had a variety of media jobs, but got involved in the early days of founding a company called Vox Media, which you may know some of our brands like Vox and Eater, SB Nation, Curb, New York Magazine, The Verge, those kinds of things. And I had several jobs there as an executive, running the digital teams. And then for a while, I ran our advertising business. And then 5 years ago, I moved out to Los Angeles to build our television studio. And so now I run a sort of an independent TV studio producing shows for Netflix and HBO and Hulu and other places. And you might have seen one of the shows I produce. It's called Explained on Netflix. And we've been producing a coronavirus miniseries that has been quite successful, and we'll be releasing more episodes of that miniseries in the next couple of weeks. So we've been really excited about that. And, I'm just grateful for everybody to come onto this panel, and hopefully we don't have all the answers, but hopefully we can, give you any things that we've learned.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. Hi, I'm Claire Russell, and I lead the media team at Fitzco, which is an ad agency in Atlanta. I studied advertising at Grady with a consumer economics minor, although really I took the consumer economics minor because it was really easy at the time. It's what all the athletes took, although I guess you could probably reframe that into maybe how I ended up on the media side. I spent some time at Publicis Group agencies working at Moxie and Performix, spending many years working on the Verizon business before moving over to Fitzco. At Fitzco, we're full service, everything from account strategy, production, creative, and media, working on clients like McCormick, Coke, Johnsonville, Shoe Carnival, Buffalo Wild Wings, just to name a few there. So have loved getting involved in advertising, and have loved being involved with Grady students and alumni for many years. So happy to be here today and chat with you guys a little bit about our experiences graduating in a similar-ish time frame as you too.
Is that me next? Hey guys, I'm Mandi Woodruff. I'm based in New York City, Grady grad 2009. I did some traveling after college. It seemed like a good time to get the hell out of America and go see some stuff. So I left and I came back in 2010 and moved to New York and kind of made my way as a personal finance journalist. I was the founding editor of the personal finance vertical at Business Insider, and then I moved on to Yahoo, where I was a personal finance correspondent and did a couple of web series there, and did a pivot about 4 years ago, and I joined a startup called Magnify Money, which is a personal finance marketplace where you can compare different products, and I headed up their content team, and we were acquired in 2017 by a company called Lending Tree, which is very similar to Magnify Money, and now I'm the senior content director, and we manage content for Lending Tree, but then also 7 websites that Lending Tree owns. So we're like sort of an in-house publishing machine for Lending Tree and all of its associated brands, and, killing it in quarantine in my bedroom, like a lot of people are. I just came off maternity leave right before the pandemic hit. So if you want any tips on how to do that and a recession, just gonna put myself out there. I have plenty to share. I'm happy to be here, and I wish I could see you guys, but this is cool too.
Yes, thanks, Mandi. So that's actually a great segue, your answer into our next question, which is, what was your post-grad path immediately following graduation? So it sounds like you went the route of travel. Do you want to add anything about what you did post-grad before your first job?
Yeah, I kind of had it in my head to travel, and I guess blessedly I was naive enough to just go. My little brother told me not to. He was like, "What are you doing?" I had been offered a job at a newspaper, and I just was like, "No, I want to travel." I'm glad that I did, because I eventually did get a job when I came back to New York in magazines, and I got laid off very quickly after I joined. And then I kind of bounced around a couple of like freelance gigs, and then just tried to survive. Ended up working at a news site, legal news site, which wasn't really my passion. And I wasn't actually in a writing job at all. And I was very kind of frustrated, but I had started blogging while I was traveling, and I continued to write through my blog. And it was that blog that had gotten some attention that got me the job at Business Insider when they were looking for someone to run their to do their personal finance content. And so if anything, I would say the takeaway from the early part of my journey after college was, you may not be in your dream job right away, that's for sure. I thought I had my dream job, and then I lost it 3 months after. And then I didn't have anything, which is sad. But I continued writing even when I couldn't. And I at least had something to show when I came to the interview table. So if you can, and there's so many more ways to create, even without, without corporate backing now. So if you can create. And I've followed that path throughout my career. I started a podcast in 2014 that I still produce, and did that when I was in between Yahoo and another job. And it was also my way of creating, where I didn't feel like there was a path for me to do it through my day job. And that was way more of an answer than you bargained for. So that's it. Just keep creating, y'all.
That is great. And that's such a good nugget, that there are still things that can be done. And I think we'll probably get to that here a little bit later. So thanks for that. Claire, would you like to share what you did immediately post-grad?
Yeah, I really admire Mandi's story, because I feel like I took the very risk-adverse route, which was graduate, find a job, start immediately, boomerang back to my parents' house. And I think kind of looking back on that, and to Mandi's point, there's so many ways that you can tell your story and how you spend your time and how you can be a good fit for a job. I was very scared about taking any of those risks. And I think even hearing Baron and Chad talk about moving around the country and kind of taking some of those risks, I would really encourage you guys to do that, even if you're a little bit risk adverse like me, because I think looking back on the past 10 years, your 20s is really just a great time for you to take the risks, because before you know it, other things get in the way. You're married, you want kids, however that develops for you makes it more difficult to kind of leave some roots that you build in your 20s. So while my path was pretty conservative, I would say if you have an appetite and you're hungry to try something different, I'd really encourage you to explore that now, because it really does, in hindsight, feel like the time to do that.
Great. Chad, would you like to share with us, please?
Yes. So right after graduation, I convinced two of my college friends to pack up all of our stuff and move to the city. So we rented a U-Haul truck and drove up, and didn't know anybody at all in New York, had no leads on jobs or no leads on even knowing anybody else besides the three of us. And we ended up just showing up. We stayed at one of my roommates' cousin's friend's house for a week until we could get our own apartment. We ended up living in what I found out after was an illegal sublease, and which is a classic New York story, but and moved in and tried to figure out what to do. And I mean, it was I got to New York the week that Lehman Brothers went under, which at the time I don't even think I realized the sort of scale of how bad the situation was and how hard the job prospects were. But it was very similar. All companies were basically in a hiring freeze. There was no, it was very hard to see a path to a real job the way that I had always envisioned coming out of college. I would go get a job, I would be able to get benefits and work my way up, and that just didn't wasn't on the table. I remember printing out resumes and just going to the buildings of the companies that I wanted to work at, the HBO office, and going to the security guard and just leaving it at the desk and asking them to give them somebody from HBO. And the security guys were no, get out of here, kid. What are you talking about? That was the response. And my first job that I got paid anything to do was I was basically a janitor at a studio. And I found through like a friend of a friend of a friend, his dad was a commercial producer and director, and he had his own studio, and he would make like tabletop, videography. So it was like, when you see like a McDonald's commercial, it was like his job to shoot the hamburger like in slow motion at the very end. And he was like a specialist, but he was doing production. That's what I wanted to do. And he basically hired me to clean up around the place. And so I was getting paid like $125, a day to sweep up around there. I remember he had to teach me how to use a mop because I was using it like a push broom, like pushing it around. He's like, no, son, like that's not right. You got to twist it, So it was an eye-opening experience. So I did that. I was sort of working 4 days a week at the studio as like a, kind of cleaning up and assisting and doing whatever I wanted, kind of a glorified PA. At the same time, I ended up getting my first like real PA job. I remember driving like a 15-passenger van for a Hasbro commercial and like getting up at 4 a.m. to go pick up the 15 pass and drive it to pick up the, go to this really cool hotel that I thought one day I'd never be able to stay in, to pick up the directors who had flown in from California and take them to set. And I remember I didn't get, like, I was supposed to get overtime. They didn't ever pay me. So it was like $200 and that was it. And, and all the while I was trying to continue doing my own work, like creating. And I couldn't agree more with Mandi, and that like the digital technology has like been such a paradigm shift in that, like, you don't, like, even then, 12 years ago, like I didn't need to get a film camera to make something. Like I could use digital video, I could edit it. I had Final Cut, I would edit on my computer, and I'd continue to work on my reel. So, I'd clean up at the studio, I had the keys, and I'd stay up like using the lights to make like stuff for my reel, and I would like cut it together. And I it's sorry for the long-winded answer, but it had a bit of a roundabout. So I was PAing and I was working at the studio, and then I ended up getting a job as a freelance blogger, because that was like the only place that I didn't ever want to be a writer, but I started blogging about technology at a website called Engadget, which was, one of the 2 big tech sites at the time. And within kind of 3 months of blogging for them, I ended up getting, like, they promoted me to editor. So I was like editing the site, and then, didn't get my first, and then started a little company to do that. And then it ended up producing some video for Engadget, and then we created a TV show, like a web TV show that was quite popular. So I did that at AOL, and then eventually, after doing that for like a year and a half, I became part of the team that founded Vox Media. And when I got that job in 2000 and almost 2011, so it was almost a year and a half after I graduated, that was the first time I ever got benefits. And so I remember like thinking, I may never have benefits. I was a freelancer for a year and a half, living sort of job to job, never knew. And thankfully I was very fortunate and privileged to have, good health and didn't have to worry about it. But, I didn't have health insurance. And I remember the best anecdote from that time is I remember I had like been working that whole year, and it came to be tax time. And so I called my parents and I said, like, do you guys have an accountant? Like I need to like do taxes for the first time. And my dad was like, well, how, send me your like W-2, like, or whatever it was. It was like a 1099 or whatever. Send me, how much did you make? And I made $12,000 my first year out of college. And he was like, I don't think you need an accountant. It'll be okay. Well, so we did it together. And, and I was living in New York, and I was like doing the thing, and on $12,000 in a single year. And then, from there, it was a hustle every day to like find the next thing, whether it was PAing, whether it was sweeping up, but I kept doing things. And I was very lucky to get, to be able to like nobody knew how old I was when I was blogging. I was just a writer, and I was publishing, and the stories were good, and they were publishing them. And so that was a huge shift, because it used to be to be able to write and be published in a newsroom, you had to work your way up. And I was able to, because of the digital revolution, just like do it and be a part of that, and then got promoted to editor. And then that gave me the opportunity to start really producing real stuff. It was a surreal experience, because after 2.5 years, we ended up, founding Vox Media. We were looking for our first office, and one of the brokers took me to the office that a company had gone bankrupt, and we were going to take over their office space. And it happened to be that company that hired me on the first commercial shoot, where they didn't pay my overtime. And I remember sitting in the like corner office and asking them to like pay me, and the guy said no, like it didn't deserve overtime. and that ended up being my office like 2 years later, and we were there for 6 years, and it was just like so it can happen fast, but there was a lot of uncertainty.
Right. So Baron, please tell us, what did you do immediately post-grad?
So I guess I'll start off by saying, I think Claire mentioned, her trajectory being more in the vein of like graduate, get a job, boomerang close to home, stay near your family. Like I will be completely forthright in saying that was my plan. Like I was thinking, okay, I'm graduating in 2009. So the recession had really set in at that point. And if I'm thinking about things that I can do to make money, I obviously want to, try and stay home as a means to, save up for maybe a year or two before I try to strike it out on there on my own. So rest assured, like the initial plan was not as carefree as what the execution ended up being. So like I said, I graduated in May of 2009, and then throughout the summer, I worked as an intern at the Atlanta Business Chronicle. And I was working there for 6 months, helping out with their ad sales team, as well as their events department. So the Atlanta Business Chronicle did, and maybe they still do, events around like best places to work, up and comers in the world of commercial real estate, that kind of thing. So I had a chance to get some full-time experience working there. And I remember they paid, so shout out to them. And then as the internship was becoming, obviously something that I would have to move on from, I was thinking of ways in which to try and dive into the world of advertising within Atlanta. And again, to pick on Claire, it's so funny that, flash forward 10 years now, we're all in our separate lanes. But I'm pretty sure I remember doing like an informational interview at Fitzco circa August, September 2009. And I think at that point, and Claire, you keep me honest, I think you guys had like the Yum brand accounts like Pizza Hut and Taco Bell and whatnot. So like there was some informational talk around that. So was that a yay or nay?
So the Yum brands that I started maybe 4 years ago, I don't think that we had those, but it may have been something similar in that arena. And that's back when we were owned by McCann. We actually just bought ourselves back and went independent this year. But yeah, we'll come back anytime. We'd love to.
No, it's so funny how these things work out. And whoever I interviewed with, she was of course lovely, but it was obviously more of an informational interview, and so there weren't really any job avenues within the world of advertising in Atlanta. And so, okay, I'm thinking, all right, we're talking about September, October 2009. And at that point, I was actually interviewing to be a manager at Waffle House because at the time they offered a starting salary of, I want to say it was like $50,000 to $60,000 a year, which to a 23-year-old, that's a lot of money.
How did I not know this about you? I've known
I
you
thought
for
I
like
told you that, Mandi.
15 years. Going.
I know. Tell me more,
I'm
right?
learning so much.
I know. So I did like 2 rounds of interviews at Waffle House. And I mean, not to knock Waffle House at all, but the job was essentially mine, but there was something that was kind of gnawing at me in the sense of, okay, if I go down this road, again, nothing against Waffle House. There's nothing wrong with a legal job, not by any means. And I love Waffle House. But I was thinking, if I go down this road and if I get used to this lane that is not directly correlated to the field of study that I at least want to give a try, what is that going to look like 5 to 10 years from now, as far as like, oh, I've gotten used to doing this, or I've gotten used to working in hospitality or working at Waffle House or wherever, and I've never even tried to give advertising a shot. So I turned the job down, and then I remember a good friend of mine, and Mandi knows her as well. Her name is Leela Robinson. She also lives in New York, and she had interviewed for a position at Initiative Media, which is a media agency. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. They're a media planning and buying company I want to say they're under Interpublic Group, which is a larger holding company. But anyway, they were hiring for a position that she felt that she was overqualified for, having already been 2 years out of Grady at that point. She was a Grady major herself. So she sent the job listing to me circa October 2009. I sent in my resume for it. Obviously, my resume was super entry level, so it wasn't a good fit for that position. But the HR generalist wrote back to me and said, like, thanks so much for your interest. Like, we foresee the advertising economy coming back in 2010. If budgets open up, we'll let you know. And of course, I'm thinking, okay, great, lip service, whatever. Thanks so much for your time. But sure enough, mid-December 2009, they emailed back and they said, we have a position opening up as an assistant media planner on the Nikon and Bayer accounts. Would you like to, come and interview? So I went up and interviewed. Obviously, this is entry level, so this is on my own dime. So luckily, I had the internship to help pay for a few bucks as far as spending money and getting the flight up there. So I came up, interviewed, was fortunate enough to get the position. And I started in like the beginning, I think February 1st, 2010 was my first day in the New York office. So my parents drove my stuff up from Georgia to New York in the middle of a blizzard snowstorm with a rental SUV with a U-Haul hitched to the back of it, and then we made the best of it. Came up to New York, and and I ended up staying at that job for a total of 10 months. And I say that to say, don't ever get so bogged down in this idea of what you think life is supposed to look like, because when you do that, you really cut yourself off from opportunities that may arise. So it's okay if the plan is always in motion, if the playbook is always in motion. Like Mandi said, she was initially thinking she was going to stay in Georgia, and then she got the opportunity with that publication that she worked with. And she came to New York, I think like 2 months after I did, or a month after I did. And then, that didn't, pan out. She ended up getting laid off, and look at her now running things. So, it's interesting to see how the trajectories net out across, each and every one of us, because when you're in the thick of it, you don't really know what you're doing from a macro perspective. You're just trying to get through the day. And then here we are in a pandemic trying to get through the day. So life is funny that way.
Okay, Baron, I want to stay with you because of a couple of things that you'd mentioned. It's a good lead in. So I heard an informational interview. I heard someone passed a job on to you. And of course, we're always telling students that networking is really important. So we tell them that all the time. We tell them it's key to landing roles. But with that said, we actually have had a number of students ask us for advice if it's appropriate to continue networking. For example, sending out LinkedIn requests maybe to people they don't know. So some more of that warm or maybe even cold networking, just due to the global and and domestic uncertainty that's going on. So I'd love to start with you, and then to hear from others on what you all think about that.
Yeah, so as far as recommendations that I would have, and just as in terms of my own personal point of view, I will pretty much accept a LinkedIn request on one of three things. One, if we have worked at the same company. Two, if we have an alma mater in common, great, right? And three, even if you don't fall into either one of those categories, like if you're just John Smith and we didn't work at the same company at any point, and we don't have any people in common, and we didn't go to the same school, LinkedIn has a function where you can add a personal note when you're connecting with someone, and it just helps to contextualize why that person's reaching out to you, because otherwise you're like, I'm not accepting this, like reject. But I got a request from someone, not non-UGA, same company, I think a week ago, and she was just saying, hi, I'm, curious about, this admin position, that I've seen listed for Pinterest. Can you tell me more about that? And that was in a cold LinkedIn request that she sent my way, but she just added that note in the field when she was requesting me. That way, when I was looking at my queue of requests, I would have some idea as to why she was reaching out. And so I accept it. The conversation is obviously trickier on this end right now, because Pinterest is, like most companies, largely on a hiring freeze, and some of the positions are still left up externally just to build the queue of applicants. But, we hope to reverse the hiring freeze at some point in your future. So don't be afraid to network when you're hitting people up on LinkedIn. Add a personal note. Don't be afraid to email. Samantha knows, I have no problem giving my email, cell phone number out to anyone who needs help. If I don't respond right away, just ping me out. Usually we'll follow up as quickly as I can. And yeah, the spirit of networking is you are where I would theoretically like to be. And I know that at one point you were in a position where you were doing the same thing. So it really works and thrives off of a pay it forward mindset. Because if Leela, who was obviously a friend, hadn't done something as simple as just forward me a 2-page job requisition for a position that she had discarded, then I would have very well not been in this position right here, right now. So you never know. So don't be afraid to just, turn the stones. Even if it's 50 no's, you help expand your network and you reach out to people, and people may circle back to you if they have something that's a good fit. You never know. So.
Anyone else, feel free to chime in, please.
The only thing I was going to add to that, I think adding a kind of a purpose for your outreach in the notes section makes a ton of sense. And what I would encourage you around too is, I know a lot of networking feels like, I found this job, can you help connect me to somebody who can get it? But I think during this time when a lot of companies aren't hiring, don't forget that you can reach out to people to ask their opinion on their job, their path, advice. I even had a girl who reached out to me about 2 weeks ago. She might even be on this. Her name's Adair Smithwick, if you guys know her out in the crowd. And she just reached out to me and said, I've been thinking, she got connected to me through a friend and said, I've been thinking a lot about going back to get my master's or to get a certificate program. And I'm just thinking about continued education. And I would love to know your POV on that, and if you think it's worth it. And Adair and I probably talked for 45 minutes one night, just about what she was looking to get out of her career, how she could get there, my POV on the way that I look at resumes and kind of the filter that I look at continued education through. But you think about somebody like Adair in that moment. We don't have any jobs open. She doesn't even live in Atlanta. But if she came back to me, and this kind of goes to Baron's point too, like, you never know. Like, her family may bring her back to Atlanta. She may have something that opens up and we end up connecting again. And I think the way that she and I connected was so much more authentic than just kind of that, like, here's my resume, can you help me? So as you reach out, be conscious of people's time and don't be afraid to ask them just for advice or just to listen about how they got there as well. I know my husband spent a lot of time at Turner Sports and is now at MailChimp, and he has people reach out to him all the time that just say, how did you get there? How did you do that? Like, what were things that you wish you would have known or that you could give as advice to me? And I know, at least on our side, and probably the other panelists feel the same way, like, giving that type of advice, it brings us so much energy to be able to reflect back and like tell you guys about things we wish we would have known. We love doing that. And it makes networking feel a little bit less scary, and it feels like a little bit, I don't know, more, a little bit more friendly, I think.
Anyone else want to chime in, Mandi or Chad? If not, that is okay.
Yeah, I guess, one thing that you can learn from my experience, I think it's, and you're obviously on this webinar, so you're doing better than I was at the same point in time, but like, don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, I think that's I was like pretty confident and felt like asking for help was like somehow admitting like weakness in a way. Like, and so, I thought I would just like go to the big city and like make it happen and be discovered. And it was gonna, and I was gonna work really, really hard. But I think I've made myself work a lot harder than I needed to by not taking advantage of things like this and professionals in your network that, the university does such a good job of sort of cultivating and staying in touch with. And so it's just like, don't be afraid to ask for it. And then on the like outreach side, it is, my advice to people is always like, don't be afraid to send an email. And a lot of times it is about getting like, you may not be the hiring manager, but people reach out to me all the time, like asking for an intro to a hiring manager. And if I see Georgia and their on their resume, I'll always respond. But one of the just really tactical things is like, we're all busy, and responding to an email like that sometimes is not like the top of my priority list. And so I will forget about it. And so I always tell people, like, always send a follow-up if you don't hear back within 2 days. And then if you don't hear back after your first follow-up, then just let it go, because you're not going to, but a lot of times, I mean, more often than I'd probably like to admit, like I'll get something, it'll like disappear in my inbox, and then someone will follow up 2 days later and I'll be like, oh God, I felt like I was planning on doing that. And then I'll make myself take a second to respond and try and make a connection. So I always say to people, like, set a calendar alert. Like if you send in a cold email, or even just even not a cold email, but someone you may have met at an alumni event, you want their help, just as soon as you send that email, send yourself a calendar invite or an alert or an alarm, and send them a follow-up if you don't hear back within 2 days. And again, if you don't hear back then you're probably it's probably like a pass, so you're probably not going to hear back. And then then it's like pestering, and you don't want to, there's probably a reason why they're not responding at that point, and they may not be able to help. But don't be afraid to do that. And that doesn't just apply for asking for help. I mean, I use that rule for myself talking to anybody when I send them an email. So that's just like a little piece of tactical advice.
Yeah, ditto. Oh, hello. Hello.
Yay, it's Rio.
Have a cute baby and it distracts them from everything that's wrong with you. Yeah, so for me, every job I've had, the only job I've applied for was my internship in my junior year of college. And it's like, I can trace back the line, and it's like, and that's not to say I didn't apply for jobs. I definitely applied, and they're, sent my resume to like the black hole of, whatever those HR sites are, Indeed and all that. But human connection's always been my, I think someone in the Q&A asked about soft skills. And I think one of the really important soft skills is how to build connections in a meaningful way with people who just are fascinate you, that are interesting to you. I've always been like, I almost used the word collector, but that sounds so grimy. I mean, I've just been drawn to people who I'm very curious about, and I kind of just keep tabs on them, and I follow them. And there's so many ways, it couldn't be easier to get people's attention now. There's so many channels. Imagine the days when it was just like, what's your mailing address? Now it's Twitter, there's Instagram, there's people have their own websites, they have contact forms. It's really hard. I don't think that the hard part is finding people and how to reach them. I think the hard part is how to do it in a genuine way, and how to build a relationship. And you don't want to do it in a way that comes across as opportunistic, where you should genuinely have an interest in something they do, because people can smell the bullshit, and they know if you're coming to them. I get tons of, requests from people who see that I was at Business Insider and, I have this internship, there's this job I want to apply for, could you put in a good word? And, I don't, because my name is attached to that. And if I don't know you, then I lose trust with that hiring manager. And it is important for us to refer people who, we will make us look good, for referring them. That's important to our own relationships too. And we're still out here in the working world. So soft skill, definitely building relationships, and then show me you've done something. Like I said, I really did talk my way into a job that I had no business getting, because I'd never written about finance or business. And I don't know if I mentioned it, but I studied magazines, which isn't even a thing anymore, when I was at Grady. And I had a blog, and I knew I could write and I could show that. And then once I got in the door, because I knew someone from my internship, that's how I got in the door at Business Insider. Then I could show, okay, I may not have the resume, but I've done this thing. I'm so passionate. My blog was about biking in New York City. It wasn't even about money. Okay. Like, just create something. And the way that I ended up at the startup Magnify Money was because I had started my podcast, Brown Ambition, which is about career and finance for women, especially women of color. And my co-host I met, and then through her I met the founder of Magnify, and he was just a fascinating guy, super smart, loved talking to him. And then there we go. And I know right now it may feel like you just don't have access to these people, but you sort of need to be open. And it's like Baron said, especially there's no like perfect path for your career. And I actually think I'm excited for the next generation to have to endure something akin to the Great Recession, because I think it makes you so much better, because it makes you hustle and it makes you work hard, and it makes you, it shows that you're the cream that can rise to the top. I'm not wishing any layoffs upon you, but I do think it forces you to be creative and do things for yourself. And there's already so much, there's so much, obviously, strife, and I'm still in the personal finance world, so I know about all the struggles. My own father lost his job. There's so much, and not to mention the healthcare crisis. The world does feel like it's burning, but in the ashes, there's so much great content creation. Like Chad is saying, I'm a huge fan of some of those shows that Vox has been doing, and you have to kind of get excited about the opportunities that can be created even in times like this. And that is a little bit of a silver lining to everything being a shit show. Did I inspire you? I tried really hard. Okay.
You inspired me, so thank you.
Okay.
So please, to our attendees, feel free to answer or ask us some questions that we can answer in the Q&A box. I am going to read a couple of those. So one, and I do see Mandi answered that, so thank you. There's a way to type and then also ask the question live. So the question was, and I'm asking this because I've been getting similar questions from students, so I'd love to hear from you. What is everyone hearing about virtual internships, and does your company offer them? So Mandi did say that they do have virtual interns, but they lost some spots for the internship program in the wake of the pandemic, which I think a lot of us know has happened. We might even have some attendees on this call where that has happened. But for our other panelists, what are you all hearing with your company that you can share with us, if anything?
I can hop in. So I work at Pinterest currently. I've been at Pinterest for the last year and a half. Sadly, we did make the decision to nix our internship program for the summer, and one of the reasons for that, well, there are a couple. So one of the reasons for that is that we are a tech company, and in the world of tech, much like a Twitter or a Snapchat, and obviously to a large degree Google or Facebook, like we're so reliant on ad revenue. And with the onset of the pandemic, a lot of our advertising categories were directly impacted. So obviously like your travel, your beauty, retail, automotive, a lot of our segments were hurt pretty badly. And so we wanted to try and redouble our efforts towards improving the existing morale or improving morale for existing employees rather than run the risk of new faces coming in via internships and them having a bad experience by like saying taking on tasks in quarantine when you don't have like the benefit of like just being able to like turn to your side or ask someone for like help on like this pivot table or this spreadsheet or this Tableau dashboard. So we wanted to make sure that there was a good experience there. So for right now, our internship program has been postponed, canceled for the summer. We may do something in the fall now that we have gotten hopefully a stronger sense of what we call like our new normal. So I'm very optimistic about that. And obviously, Samantha has all of our contact information, so I'm sure she'll circulate and I'll relay any information her way if I find anything out. But yeah, right now, internships for us are something that we still consider to be very much about the personable experience. And again, because it's students, not necessarily like experienced hires, in some cases have been getting a shipment with like a welcome to Pinterest, your laptop, your swag and that kind of stuff. But for like college students, we want to make sure that your experience coming into the world of working full time is as on hand as possible. We just couldn't do that from a quarantine standpoint. So that's our answer there. But I do know other companies are adapting and doing internships to some extent, and we hope to as well once we have that better buttoned up for the fall. So long answer is TBD.
Yeah, what kind of audience, I'm sorry I didn't ask this before, but for the people who are listening, are these graduating seniors or juniors? Like, does it vary?
I think it does vary. We did open it to everyone. I can see the attendee list. Of course, don't know everyone on here, but I'm seeing some current students. I'm seeing some Grady faculty and staff, so thank you all for joining us too. And I do think we have some graduates as well. So it's a bit of a mix. Okay,
yeah, I was just wondering if I was going to say if you're junior, you still have time. But, senior may not be looking at internships, but more entry-level jobs. The point is, my point is, the numbers are going to be really scary. The unemployment numbers are going to be scary. People are in hiring freezes. We're in a bit of a hiring freeze too, although we're not a traditional media company. It's all going to be saying that you can't make it, but you just got to keep trying anyway. And definitely for me, that summer after I got laid off, I was transcribing for a CNN producer. I was transcribing her notes, and I was dog walking and babies, like doing random stuff. And, it takes what it takes until things start getting a little bit better. And, if the dream internship doesn't work out, you just got to be flexible. Just, really you have to be like rubber and just bounce on to the next thing, and try not to get too down and in the dumps about the thing that you thought, was going to happen, isn't going to happen. I thought I was going to go back to my own office and have a door I could close and all kinds of stuff. And now I'm working with this squirt in my lap all the time, and you just kind of have to be flexible.
Okay, so follow up question that I am looking for that's similar from Danielle Harvey. Thank you for asking this. What kind of work or activities would you all recommend that students do this summer to replace an internship which was canceled due to the virus? This particular student will be graduating in December and is worried that employers will be very strict about having that on their resume. And I do know that we've gotten, again, very similar questions from other students. So we touched on this a little bit, but if you all would share any thoughts, I think they'd appreciate hearing that.
There's tons of freelance work. Especially, I don't know if you're writing or doing videography, like there are freelance gigs to be had. It's still a gig economy very much. And I think you could replicate maybe some of the skills that you have, or not replicate, but harvest some of the skills that you have if you look for some, and you're open to freelance work.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think like part of it, in terms of looking at resumes, at least when we're hiring, there's no checkbox for every resume. Like we're not looking, and the other thing kind of coming out as a graduating senior, it's like at the end of the day, if you've gone to a good school, like most people's resumes are relatively similar. I mean, you don't have the opportunity to have sort of a decade of experience and all of the sort of diverse experiences that can provide. So you're basically like generally starting from the kind of same spot. And so, anytime I can see like practical experience, that is great. And I think freelancing is a great example. I did a mock interview with a Grady student who had been working at the radio station and producing segments. And she ended up actually interviewing me for a segment that ran on the radio station. And it was like, she's doing the job. And I sent her to our podcasting team and said, like, here's someone who knows how to do it already. And like, she's not been hired, but I think she's like doing some pickup work for them. And like, it's helpful to see people who are like in the world doing it. And the big revolution of digital is like, you could start a YouTube channel. You could make a doc about the first responders in your neighborhood or about the protests, or, if you're trying to do a job where you're telling stories, like you can tell a story with your cell phone, or your voice or your words or your mind. And I think I like to see work and sort of that creativity expressed in doing things. And even if that just aired on your Instagram or on your YouTube channel, like that in some ways like says a lot more even than a blue chip internship. If you were trying to go work at like KPMG or a consultant or something like that, that's like a little bit of a different path. But this is Grady. Like we're as much arts as we are business. And so I think take advantage of the moment that we're in to sort of hone your storytelling skills, keep making stuff. And you should, there are gigs out there. And the last thing I'll say too, it's like last time in 2008, I mean, I don't believe that I would have been able to get a job as a paid editor, even though I was freelance, like at 23 in a previous economy. Like those people who could get those jobs had lots more experience. They were paid a lot more, but I was paid a lot less and did the job. And because it was like a chance to do it. And so I think that there's a slight, like, I wouldn't call it a silver lining because there's so much uncertainty, but there's going to be opportunities and openings for people who are good and willing to do the work and do the hustle. Because even if you're entry level, if the work product doesn't, it doesn't know how old you are or how experienced you are if you do great stuff.
Yeah, I think Chad made a great point that we talk about all the time. I think what we do see from resumes, and I know this like might crush you, like they pretty much are all the same. And like we know on our side that we're gonna have to train you for the job anyway. So the resume, in the way that I think about it, is the resume what gets you in the door. I think what Chad's talking about in terms of, and what comes through a lot for me when I talk to interviewees, y'all's age and position, is there's so many intangibles that come through in the way that Chad's talking about that. It's hustle, it's caring, it's like you've gone out, you've made stuff, you've gotten involved in stuff, you showed passion, because those are all things that we want to bring you into our team. We'll teach you like the random shit you need to know about how to do the job, but we really are looking for those intangibles and how to hire for them. So think about that lens when you're finding stuff to do this summer. How do you tell that story when you get in person? Because it's that enthusiasm and that kind of authenticity that I think comes across and really sells you more than like I think is what I'm trying to say. Like, show them who you are. Don't get so tied up in that it has to be the perfect thing and it has to be for a company everyone's heard of and it's got to be this and this. Like, just get out there and like, if it's your dad's dentist practice, like talk about like how you took him from here to here and how you thought he could evolve because he's not talking to Gen Z in the right way. You name it. I think who you are is really what you're selling in kind of an entry level early interview.
Great.
Could I just hop in for a quick sec?
Yes, absolutely.
So I agree with everything that everyone else has said, and especially in the vein of what Chad and Claire were saying about like just people really enjoying being able to see work and being able to see some kind of energy and hunger. My direct advice to everyone who's on this panel is figure out the tools that drive your industry and see what you can do to dive into those tools while you have this downtime. So for example, if your thing is video production, I don't know anything about Final Cut Pro, but apparently everything is made in that, right? So if you can teach yourself Final Cut Pro or take some courses, and you want to get in the world of like video production with an official company or some production arm, like it'll put you that much further ahead, even just having some basic or intermediate skill. In the world of advertising, or even like PR, which obviously are my direct lanes. And Rio agrees with me, so that's a plus. He totally agrees. So if you can figure out how to use Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, obviously Word doc, Google Sheets, all these other tools to figure out how to run like pivot tables, VLOOKUPs. If you can write macros, I'm just saying like anything that you can do in the realm of what the tools are that are supporting your industry, because every industry has like a standard set of software tools like Nielsen, Media Metrics, or ComScore for pulling like crosstabs. I know a lot of the curriculum is like MRI and SIMS data, et cetera. So like figure out what your industry or the industry that you want to tap into thrives on, and try to find a way to take some classes. I know a lot of these companies offer student rates for downloads of software. You can tap sources like Masterclass or Coursera for entry-level, educational thinking into, certain bits of software. So like, yeah, like anything that your industry is going to rely on, take this time to like really dial up in it. And that's something that I am trying to do as well 10 years in, like figuring out ComScore. It's like, it's tough. And so anything that you can do to set yourself apart from what you have like up here is going to be a game changer.
And what a great way to tie that into networking too, just to kind of bring it back full circle. Because if you've got somebody in an industry that you admire or a role that you admire, and you're out there trying to pound the pavement on learning MRI, reach out to them and say, hey, I've been trying to teach myself MRI. And can you help me understand what you use that for? And like, if you have anything that you can share that's not, exposing confidential information or whatever, would love to just hear from your perspective, X person at this company, like your experience with it, and are there other tools you use? Like, what a great way to start a conversation that doesn't feel so, here's my resume, can you help me kind of thing. That's a great idea.
Great. So I think one last question, and I know there are still a couple of questions in the queue that we didn't get to, so I will share. If you were a student who asked a question like that, I'm sure if you email Whitney and I, we would be happy to answer it for you. We want to make sure that you get the information that you need. But one last question that I wanted to ask as we wrap up is, what course, internship, or personal project best prepared you for your line of work?
I can't say a course. Like I said, I studied magazines and I don't even do that anymore. Great teachers though. Yeah, so for me, two things. The Red and Black was a big one. It certainly taught me the tenets of journalism that I use to this day. Can't say it taught me a lot in the way of writing for a digital audience, considering we were still like a daily paper at that point. But that I picked up later on the fly. Other than the Red and Black, which is kind of obvious, for me, I did a volunteer project every spring break. I did volunteer relief. I started college right after Hurricane Katrina hit that year. And so each spring break I did relief in New Orleans or in surrounding areas. And I became a team leader. And I remember being 18, 19 and being a team leader and being in charge of people who were a lot older than me, and really struggling and really stressed and having total imposter syndrome without even knowing what that was. But I'm so glad I had that experience leading a team and being someone asked about confidence in the questions, and I really wanted to get to that one. They were like, how do you have confidence? You don't. You just have to fake it till you make it. And you're going to maybe call your mom and cry and tell her that you just are way in over your head. And I kind of feel like that's a sign that you're growing. And I manage a team of like 30 people now, and I know I couldn't do it. I wouldn't have had the confidence. I started when I was 26. And like Chad talks about age, you know, never really wanted to broadcast my age, but it doesn't matter because I knew I could do the job. And it's because I'd sort of been from way back doing those team leading and you know, during those volunteer organizations. Like I got that, those skills of managing people that I knew I needed. And that's something that I was going to get at 19 years old in the corporate world. I got it through a volunteer organization. So it's also it's not journalism related, but in the world of working your way up, if you want to get to a management position, no one teaches you how to manage people in college. I don't know, maybe they do in the business school, but I wasn't at Terry. I was at journalism, where you're all just, you know, writing and creative. And I certainly think that has set me up for the success. Not that I'm done, but success today, for sure.
Would anyone else like to chime in?
Yeah, sure. I'll give it a shot. You know, I learned a lot from sweeping up that floor, honestly, by just being around. I mean, one, it was like humiliating in a way, but also it meant that like I had the keys to the studio and there was a whole gear locker full of cameras and lenses and lighting, and I could like play with it and mess around with it. And it was the same thing like when I started blogging. It was like they gave me the keys to the CMS and I was figuring out how to make it look better because I just wanted to make my posts look cooler and formatting. And like, so I learned a little bit about, you know, what I do now from every one of those experiences. You know, it's funny, like now managing, like hiring big directors and producers and talent, like I had learned a lot, like driving them around as a PA and like how they talked about like themselves and how they talked about what they were doing. And like, and so just like that exposure, you know, taught me a lot about like on the ground, what it was like. And, you know, and like, it would have been different. I wouldn't have had the same perspective on how to do it had I like started out working at a corporate job and like worked my way up from there. And I frankly, like, I didn't want that. And I think I chose my path for that reason. Like I figured if I got it, you know, pretend that like that security guard would have taken my resume straight up to Richard Pepler's office at HBO back when he was CEO, and I would have gotten a job working for him, it would have been like, you know, I would have had to sort of work my way up for 15 years before anybody let me get close to the real thing, you know, like where the actual stuff gets made. And, you know, I always wanted to be closer to the bottom, like closer to where the actual shit is happening and where things are getting made. And so, you know, like it was a good experience to kind of see that side. So I took a little bit of it out of everything, even the stuff that felt really, you know, I mean, it was never demeaning because it was like, I wanted to be there and I was doing it, but it was like, you know, you can learn a lot from just watching people work. And it turns out that the people that I had those first impressions of that who were good or who had like high standards and had a lot of integrity, it's like, those are the people who are now like doing the biggest things, you know, that I know. And it's like, it is truly like people who work hard, who have high standards for themselves and their teams and who do it with a lot of integrity are the ones that, you know, are the ones that stick around. And so, you know, like, that's what I would say, like, take this summer, take this next year. And like, there shouldn't be anything that you're doing that feels like a waste. I think anything that you do is going to be better than doing nothing, and getting out there and participating in the thing at any level. If you want to make content, you've just got to make content. And like I said, you could be doing local commercials. You could be working for, you know, the dentist's office doing marketing, but like, get as close to the work product as you can, you know, especially now where you're, you know, where there might not be, you know, they don't have to pay you a ton to get that close, because, you know, and take advantage of that. And then you'll be on the path.
Okay. Well, we ran just a few minutes over, so I'm sorry for keeping you all past our 5 o'clock end. But thank you all so much to our panelists for being with us. And like we said, same to attendees and attendees who asked questions and we weren't able to get to. Please reach out to me and Whitney. We're here. And additional plug for Whitney and the Career Center. They are doing virtual appointments and still here for you throughout the summer and for recent grads. So please reach out to them. Any last thoughts anyone would like to share before we end it here?
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. It'll be fine, I hope. And shout out to the Career Center. I used to get my resume. I would go there all the time and bother y'all to get my resume dusted off. Do that, because even though a resume doesn't really set you apart, a bad one can really make you stand out. So yeah, that's my parting word.
Yeah, it's a rough time, but I think Mandi said, like, even if it feels like America is burning right now, like, the phoenix rises from the ashes, right? So there will be a lot for the industry to recover towards, and as that recovery process is in motion, there's going to be a lot of jobs opening up. So don't despair. Yeah.
Election cycle's coming, and that's like prime time for freelance gigs in journalism. Like, so many places are looking to hire. I can't stop it. But yes, looking to hire temporary gig workers to kind of beef up around the election cycle, even now with everything that's going on. So maybe there's opportunities there.
Great. Well, thank you for that lift at the end. I appreciate that. I know our students do too. Okay, well, thank you all. We really appreciate you all taking the time, and we hope you all have a good day.